may be seated. This morning we're going to talk about the last of the 7 deadly sins. We have been in a study called Killjoys, and we've been studying these 7 deadly sins and how they kill our joy and how we can kill them before they kill our joy. And today we're going to talk about the 7th of the 7 deadly sins, lust. So we have a children's church. If you have a child, you might want to send them to children's church today because we're going to talk about the 7th deadly sin of lust. I have a few statistics to share with you this morning. I'm sure I'm not going to have to convince you it's not going to be very hard to convince you that lust is a big problem in our society, in our country, in our world today. According to one of the reports that I've read, the porn industry in the U.S. generates more revenue than pro football, pro baseball, and pro basketball combined. Think about how much money the NFL makes, the MLB, the NBA. Think about all that money. Well, the porn industry in the U.S. makes, some have said 3 times that. According to Dr. Gail Dines, I heard her give a report on NPR. I'm not saying I'm a fan of NPR, but I was listening to it one day, and I'm not endorsing them or anything, but this particular interview was with a doctor named Dr. Gail Dines, and she said that one of the most popular porn sites, I'm not going to name it because I don't want to advertise it, it gets more visitors than Netflix, Amazon, and Twitter combined. That should blow your mind. More traffic than Netflix, Amazon, and Twitter all combined together. And the last statistic I want to share with you is that according to researchers, pornography makes up 1/3 of the entire internet. Think of all the information that's out there on the web. We use the web every single day. 1/3 of it is full of lust. Lust is a very, very big problem in our culture, in our society, and so we're going to talk about it today. We're going to talk about, first of all, what it is. We're going to define it. So buckle up. Here we go, jumping right in. What is lust? Hopefully my clicker works. It's not working, so that's a bad sign. There we go. Defining lust. If you want to turn to a passage, you can. I have all the verses up on the screen because we have a lot of verses to cover. Colossians chapter 3, verses 5 and 6 are a good place to start, so we're going to start there. Colossians chapter 3, verses 5 and 6 say this: Therefore, put to death your members which are on the earth, fornication, uncleanness, passion, evil desire, and covetousness, which is idolatry. So this passage lists off several sins, and in this list are all sexual sins. We have fornication. That is sexual activity outside of marriage or before marriage. Uncleanness, it's talking about sexual uncleanness. Passion, it's talking about sexual sin. And then it uses this word evil desire. That's the word for lust. In other contexts, it's translated as lust, evil desire. Another great verse is 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verses 4 and 5. It uses the same word that we just saw in the last verse. That's translated evil desire. It's translated as lust. Here you can see it underlined here. It says, each of you should know how to possess his own vessel in sanctification and honor, not in passion of lust, like the Gentiles who do not know God. In this context, he's talking about sexual purity. And he says, you should not act as everybody else does, the unbelieving Gentiles, in the passion of lust. Same word, same Greek word. Now, there's another interesting passage, Romans chapter 7, verse 7. Uses the exact same word that we just saw in these last two passages, but it uses it in a different way. And it helps us unlock the meaning of what lust really is. Romans chapter 7, verse 7 says this. What shall we say then? Is the law sin? Certainly not. On the contrary, I would not have known sin except through the law. So he's talking about the Mosaic law. He's talking about the Ten Commandments. Most of us know them. Honor your father and mother. Don't lie. Don't steal. And then he says, for I would not have known covetousness unless the law had said, you shall not covet. That's the 10th of the Ten Commandments. And the word that's used here is the same word that we just saw in the other two passages. It's the word for lust, covetousness. That's what we're talking about here when we use the word lust. So go back in your mind to the Ten Commandments. What did the Ten Commandments say? What was the commandment about covetousness? It's found in Exodus 20:17. It says, you shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that is your neighbor's. See, oftentimes we think of covetousness when it comes to things, but covetousness applies to people too. We can covet our neighbor's stuff, his house, his servant, his donkey. Lust is covetousness. What does covetous mean? To covet means to desire something that belongs to another person. Okay, so in the 10th commandment, don't covet your neighbor's house. Oh, I really like that guy's house. I really want his house. You're not supposed to do that. That's part of his stuff. You're not supposed to covet his ox or his donkey or anything that is your neighbor's. But it also says, don't covet your neighbor's spouse. See, covetousness doesn't just apply to things, it also applies to people. You can covet another person's body. And that's what lust is. If lust is covetousness, therefore, lust is sexually desiring a body that does not belong to you. That's the simplest definition that I can come up with from these Bible passages. But it's very important to define our terms because we need to know what lust is before we can combat it, before we can battle it. It's sexually desiring a body that does not belong to you. Well, that begs the question, is any sexual desire appropriate? Yes. Within the confines of a heterosexual, monogamous, marital relationship. That's the only time when it is appropriate. According to the Bible, 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 4, this is a fun verse. I remember when I was a kid, our pastor preaching through this chapter in the Bible and thinking, whoa, that's in the Bible? I'm not going to go through the whole context, but it is an interesting verse where it says in 1 Corinthians 7:4, a wife does not have the right over her own body, but her husband does. In the same way, a husband does not have the right over his own body, but his wife does. In this context, Paul is talking about the sexual relationship between a husband and a wife. And he says that the wife's body doesn't belong to her, it belongs to her husband, and vice versa. In a marital relationship, let me say a heterosexual, monogamous marital relationship, each spouse belongs to each other. They belong to one another. And therefore, in that context, in the confines of marriage, it is appropriate to sexually desire one another. But outside of that, there is no permission to lust, to desire. So that's defining lust. Now, let's spend some time denouncing lust. We can't just define it, we need to denounce it. And I'm sure in your mind, as you heard we're going to talk about lust, you probably thought of Matthew chapter 5, verse 28. Jesus had something very, very important to say about this subject. He says in Matthew chapter 5, verse 28, that lust is adultery. He says, but I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to lust for her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. That's the exact same word that we've looked at so far in the Greek, in the original language. The same word as covetousness, as evil desire, It's the same word. Jesus says if you look at a person and lust after them and you're not married to them, you've committed adultery in your heart. As a youth pastor over the years, I heard a lot of different people try to explain away and try to whitewash the looking of pornography, the viewing of pornography, saying it's no big deal, God's not going to judge you, it's fine. I'm sorry, but I can't get past what Jesus is saying in these words. It is, in God's eyes, just as bad as adultery, just as bad as fornication. In fact, when the Bible uses the word fornication in the Greek, it's the word porneia. And so it is a big deal. It is something that we should denounce. It's not just something that God considers as adultery, it's literally something that sends people to hell. In the same context, when Jesus says in Matthew chapter 5, verse 28, if you look with lust, you've committed adultery in your heart. In the very next verse, Jesus says, if your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and cast it from you, for it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. Hell is the ultimate destiny for those who live a lifestyle of unrepentant lust. God sends people to hell for that. Now, those who are in hell have committed worse sins than just lust. But it is part of the sin that sends people to hell. Now, just a side note, when Jesus says, pluck out your eye and later cut off your hand, he's not being literal. He's using exaggeration, hyperbole to get his point across. You need to be radical about getting rid of this sin in your heart, in your life. Lust is adultery. It sends people to hell, and it is a sin that is a root sin. As we look in the Bible and see some of the sins that people commit, it starts with lust. Think of King David, the famous Jewish king. And there's a lot of great stories about David, but we all know about the most infamous part of his life is that he committed adultery with his neighbor's wife. How did that sin start? It didn't just start one day by all of a sudden happening. It started with David standing on the roof of his palace and looking down and noticing a beautiful woman and lusting after her. And that lust grew in his mind, and it turned into him fantasizing more and more, and then inviting her over, and you know the rest of the story. Lust is a root sin. And it leads to all kinds of terrible other sins like adultery. So if you think in your mind of a tree and at the roots are lust, the fruits that are produced from the root would be adultery or fornication or rape or any other number of sexual sin that is out there. That's what lust is like. It's a root sin that causes other wicked fruits. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the serial killer. His name was Ted Bundy. But there's a really interesting video out on YouTube. It involves an interview between Ted Bundy and Dr. James Dobson. Probably heard of him before, a Christian psychologist or counselor. And Dr. James Dobson sits down with Ted Bundy the very day that he's going to be executed for his crimes. Ted Bundy is an infamous serial killer. He raped and murdered many, many people, an awful, wicked man. But he was willing to sit down with Dr. Dobson, and they have a conversation. And one of the questions that Dr. Dobson asks Ted Bundy is, how did you get to that point? How'd you get there? And it's amazing to hear his answer. He said, it started when I was young, and I was looking at pornography. And it turned from one thing into another, into another, into another, to the point where here I am today. You can trace the fruit in Ted Bundy's life all the way back to the root of lust. Finally, in denouncing lust, you need to understand that lust, it's a killjoy. And it's a guarantee, it's a promise. It will kill your joy. Lust promises joy, but it never comes through on its promise. It's impossible because it's a killjoy. The Bible says in Proverbs chapter 6, verse 25, "Do not lust after her beauty in your heart, nor let her allure you with her eyelids. For by means of a harlot a man is reduced to a crust of bread. An adulteress will prey upon his precious life. Can a man take fire to his bosom and his clothes not be burned?" Now, in this context, Solomon is writing to his son. So if you're a woman here, it's not trying to be sexist in the pronouns that it uses. The principles here apply to male and to female, but Solomon, in the context, is writing to his son, and he's trying to help him understand, listen, don't go down this path. Don't fall for this trap. There is a trap out there. It's called lust, and it will burn you. Can a man take fire into his bosom and his clothes not be burned? Don't play with fire. Why? Because fire will burn you. I remember when I was a kid, we used to play with fire. I probably shouldn't tell this story because it might make you not respect me as much. But when I was a kid, I was over at my friend's house, and we were in this it's kind of like a garage room that he had, and he had a skateboard. And for some reason, we were playing with fire, and we took a lighter, and we were lighting the skateboard in this garage area, and the fire got a little out of control. There was carpet on the floor, and the fire got onto the carpet, and it started to burn, and the smoke started to get crazy, and we're like, what are we going to do? Just a bunch of 10, 11-year-old boys. What are we going to do? So we grabbed the skateboard, we grabbed the carpet, and we ran out in the backyard, and we threw it in the pool. So we destroyed this poor kid's shed, garage thing. I don't know. I can't remember what it was. And we destroyed the pool. How? We were playing with fire. You don't play with fire. Why? Because it'll burn you. In the same way, don't play with lust, because it will burn you. The Bible says in James 1:14, we've looked at this passage several times in this series, but each one is tempted when he is drawn away by his own desires and enticed. Guess what Greek word that is? The same word for lust. The same word for covetousness. We are tempted when we're drawn away by our own lusts and enticed. Then when lust or desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is full grown, brings forth death. It's a cycle. It starts with lust, which leads to sin, which brings forth death. One of my youth leaders had the acronym LSD. Have you ever heard of LSD before? Now you can remember this passage really easily. There's the acronym. There's the outline. LSD. Lust leads to sin, which leads to death. It will kill you. It will bring death in your life. And as a pastor, I can tell you, I've seen lust kill relationships. I've seen lust kill careers. I've seen lust destroy people. It's not something to trifle with. It's not something to play around with. And because it is like that, we need to destroy it. We need to destroy lust from our lives. So how can we do that? I want to spend some time this morning sharing with you an outline, an acronym from the book that we've alluded to several times called Killjoys. This book was edited by John Piper's ministry called Desiring God. And this chapter on the subject of lust was written by John Piper. And in his chapter, he not only talks about defining it and denouncing it, but he spends some time talking about practical ways that we can destroy lust from our hearts. And he uses this acronym of ANTHEM. And so I want to share it with you today. Now, this isn't an exhaustive list. There are more things that you can do. But if you'll start here, you'll be off to a great start. So, the A. A stands for avoid sites and situations that incite temptation. Avoid sites and situations that incite temptation. Think of King David. If King David had immediately turned around and walked away from the rooftop of his palace and never gone back there during that time of day, he would have been fine. Avoid sites and situations that incite temptation. Romans chapter 13, verse 14 says, "But put on the Lord Jesus Christ and make no provision for the flesh to fulfill its lusts." Oftentimes, we will make provisions for our flesh to fulfill its lusts. When I was a college student, my dad and I would go on fishing trips to Canada. And you don't just jump in a car and drive to Canada to go on a fishing trip. You have to make provisions for your trip. You have to go shopping and get tackle and lures and fishing supplies. You have to get food to live off during the week. You have to figure out clothing that you're going to wear. Maybe you need rain gear because it's going to rain all week, which it did one year. It was awful. You have to make provisions for your trip. And we do that for all kinds of different situations. We make provisions for our lives. This passage says, don't do that with sin. Don't do that with lust. Don't make provisions for you to commit some kind of sin down the road. Avoid sites and situations that incite temptation. N. N stands for say no. Say no. The Bible says in James 4:7, "Therefore submit to God, resist the devil, and he will flee from you." Say no. You might say, well, it's hard to say no. Well, exactly. It's hard to say no, but I'll tell you something. The more you say no, the easier it gets. The longer you say no, the easier it gets. This passage promises us that if we resist the devil long enough, eventually he'll flee from us. And that's what we see when Jesus is tempted by the devil. He casts a temptation in front of him and he resists him and back and forth. And eventually, the Bible says that the devil left him alone for a while. Now, not for forever. He did come back eventually. And the same thing is true with us. If we will resist the devil, if we will say no, that temptation will subside. T. T stands for turn forcefully to Jesus as a superior satisfaction. The Bible says in Hebrews 11, "By faith Moses refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin, esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he looked to the reward." This passage tells us how Moses was able to defeat the temptation that he faced. It doesn't just tell us that he defeated it, it tells us how he did it. How did he do it? It says he looked to the reward. He esteemed the reproach of Christ greater riches. He figured out, yeah, there's short-term pain, but in the end, there's long-term gain. What temptation will want you to do, what lust will want you to do, is have short-term gain, and it will give you long-term pain. But God tells you to do the exact opposite. Deny yourself. Say no to the temptation. Deny the lust. And it will be painful, yeah, in the short run, but in the long term, there will be long-term gain. Turn forcefully, this says, to Jesus as a superior satisfaction. In my fight with sin, this has been the game changer for me. Understanding that there is more pleasure that Jesus has to offer than any temptation that this world has to offer. It's a game changer. Ever since then, it's changed my battle with sin. H. H stands for hold the promises of God. Hold on to them. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13 says, no temptation has overtaken you except such as is common to man, but God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able, but with the temptation will also make a way of escape that you may be able to bear it. This is a promise of God. There's always an escape hatch. There's never a situation in your life where you have to sin. There's always a way out. That's what this verse promises. So take that promise and hold on to it and cling to it and believe in it, because these are the things that will help you get out of these tempting situations. E. Enjoy superior satisfaction in Jesus. Psalm 16:11. You will show me the path of life. In your presence is fullness of joy. At your right hand are pleasures forevermore. Now it sounds a lot like the T, and maybe it's okay to reiterate this idea that God offers better, richer rewards than anything that sin and Satan can offer us. I kind of compare sexual sin to eating fast food. Have you ever been so full after maybe like a Thanksgiving dinner, and then you see a commercial on TV for McDonald's or Pizza Hut or some fast food, and you're like, oh, get it away from me. Oh, I can't even look at that. That's disgusting. Why? Because you're so full on satisfying, home-cooked goodness. The same thing is true of temptation. If we are full with the superior satisfaction and pleasure that God and Jesus offers, then we won't even want to take a bite of the sexual sin that's out there. It won't even be a temptation. Finally, M. M stands for move elsewhere and go do something. What does the Bible say in 2 Timothy 2:22? If you want an easy way to remember that reference, every verse has an address. 2 Timothy 2:22, 2:22. Look it up. What does it say? Flee youthful lusts. Flee them. Run away. It's okay to retreat sometimes when you're fighting against sin. Flee them. This is a strategy that the Bible literally tells us to use in our fight against sin. How did Joseph overcome the temptation that he experienced with Potiphar's wife? He just ran away. Do you think David could have done the same thing? Sure. Do you think you can do the same thing? Exactly. Yes, you can. These are some strategies from biblical verses, from biblical principles that you can use to overcome this sin of lust. And as we close, let me tell you, I know it's not going to be an easy fight. I know it's not going to be an overnight victory. But if you apply these principles in your life and in your heart, over time you will begin to see a pattern of victory over this sin of lust. Lust is a killjoy. Be killing lust, or lust will be killing your joy. Again, as a pastor, this is now I'm going on 16 years in pastoral ministry. I have seen this sin destroy people's marriages. I don't want to give you the sordid details, but I have seen young men come into my office in tears. I have seen men totally broken because their marriage has been destroyed by this sin of lust. I have friends whose careers have been destroyed because of lust. I have experienced and walked people through the destruction that lust has caused in their hearts. And I don't want that for you. And so I plead with you. Will you do something to destroy the lust that will kill your joy? I pray that you will. If you need counsel in this area, please don't hesitate to call me. I am here for you. I'd love to give you resources. I'd love to talk to you about how you can combat the lust that will kill your joy. Let's close in prayer. Dear God, we thank you for the practical advice that your word gives us, and we pray that you would help us to heed the warnings of your word, that we would not leave this place without covenanting to do something about it. We thank you that your Son, Jesus Christ, died on the cross for our sin and canceled its debt and canceled the power that sin has over us. And so we pray that you will help us to move on, to stand up, and to fight from here on out.